All right, everybody. My guest today is a business finance coach who has been helping owners master their cash flow and maximize profit for more than a decade. She specializes in using time-tested financial principles to help clients achieve their professional and personal goals with more clarity and less stress. Lauren Rilling, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Brian. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I am so glad to have you here. You and I have been friends for a while, and I always enjoy hearing your insights about managing your cash flow and generating profit for small business owners. So I'm excited to share that with our travel audience today. Before we start, though, you have a personal connection to travel. It's a lot of fun. Your dad worked in travel when you grew up. Tell us about
Yeah.
that experience, what it was like spending time in his company, and maybe how that affected the way you came to see business.
Yeah, that's a fun memory because my dad managed a boutique travel agency for over 40 years. And so when I was a little kid, I remember going into his office and helping him print people's airline tickets. Back when
Wow.
airline tickets, you would call your travel agent and you would say, book your travel, book all everything with the travel agent, not on the internet. And there's a special printer and special paper for these airline tickets. And so I would help print them out and bring them to my dad from the back office. And I just remember the sound of the printer because it was kind of like screechy
Hmm.
and had this very unique tone to it. And then the paper was like this thick, glossy cardboard. And it was just so fun to get to have that be part of my like childhood memory. But then also, as I grew up, I started helping out in the office. And so that was actually my first job when I was 16 was doing research assistant work and just like secretarial work for the travel agency. And I did that all through college as well and helped plan vacations. So it was a really big part of my, early professional development.
Yeah. Did that exposure to small business kind of spark something in you or make you think, hey, this is a group of people that I would maybe see myself serving one day?
Oh, for sure. Because I mean, first of all, travel is just so much fun,
Right.
right? But then also you're having conversations about the customer experience, how you can create value. When the internet really started taking over in the, I don't know, late 90s,
Hmm.
probably with travel, there were all these conversations about, oh no, is the travel agency going to go out of business? What are you guys going to do? And I just remember my dad being like, it's not a problem. That's
Mm.
totally irrelevant to us because we know that the value we provide for people is not transactional. It's not about just printing someone's airline tickets. It's about creating these amazing itineraries and helping people to have an amazing vacation that they can't get that by booking a trip online.
Yeah.
And so he really knew what his niche was and where the value was that they were bringing. And that was something that I think I learned, as a kid that really just always stuck with me. So yeah, I think it definitely influenced my view on business and my interest in business as well.
Yeah. That's amazing because now 30 years later, everything he said is still absolutely as true as it was in the 90s. It's not about the transactions, it's about the expertise, about the service, the value, all those things. I love that perspective. So I want to ask you a bunch of questions about cash flow, about
Mhm.
profitability, about managing business finances. And we have an audience of people across the spectrum in the travel industry, from folks who are kind of just dabbling in it, doing it for fun, all the way to people who run fairly sophisticated operations. And I think there are pain points at many of those points along the spectrum. So I want to start at that sort of enthusiast end of the spectrum, the people who are leading group trips for fun. Maybe they got 30 or 40 friends that they plan a trip for 2 or 3 times a year, and they have started to think, I wonder if I could do this as a business, because they maybe make a little bit of money at the end of the trip, or they have dreams of starting a business like so many people do. So what would you tell them as they think through those dreams, as they ask those questions? What are some of the steps that they should be taking, things they should be thinking about when they consider, is this a hobby, or can I turn this into a business that could actually be my career?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there are a lot of financial considerations, and you can really figure out what your expected profit will be ahead of time, or as you're going. You don't have to take big financial risks, which is always helpful because it's a service-based business, right?
Hmm.
So you don't need a lot of capital to get started. You don't need a fancy office space. If you can keep your, I would say one thing is if you can keep your operating overhead really, really low at first, you don't need to go spend $20,000 on a fancy website, right?
Mm.
That's not why people are, that's not what gets people to book with you right now,
Yeah.
right? It's because you're offering something amazing. So know what that is and don't depart from that. Stay really
Mm.
focused on what it is that you offer that's really amazing and find ways to make that experience even better.
Yeah.
Uh, Keep your overhead low. The second thing is know what your profit margins are. Start calculating your costs. So if you know that you offer like a 5-day bicycle tour, for example, start keeping track of your costs for that particular tour,
Mm.
even just on a simple spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And then know what you're charging people so that that way you can go, okay, how much in revenue did we collect? How much were the costs? And then the remaining amount is your gross profit. And
Mm.
gross profit is everything when it comes to tour companies, at least.
Yeah.
So, knowing your costs associated with each trip that you're planning will really help you know how much you need to charge for these trips as well.
Yeah, that's such good advice. A couple things that I'm sure you would agree with as well is like, don't run this out of your personal checking account, right? Like, you definitely need a
Yes.
business account.
Yes, open up a business account. Keep everything separate. Do not put personal expenses on the business credit card or vice versa. Commingling funds just makes it an accounting mess, and you're going to spend a lot of money having someone untangle that for you. So keep business expenses with the business account, personal expenses with the personal account. If you're going to take some money out of your business account for an owner draw while you're first getting started, transfer it from the business account to your personal account or write a check out of that account so that you can clearly see this was owner's compensation or a personal expense and it's not all getting mixed up.
Yeah. So you mentioned, keeping a spreadsheet, keeping track of transfers. At what point does somebody who's, dabbling and making a little bit of money, what point do they need to think about accounting software or a bookkeeper, or how much does it matter to keep track of every dollar you spend? Or if you're profitable, is it good enough to just, keep doing the fun part of the work?
No, I would say that the sooner you get proper accounting set up, the better. Because if you don't, you're going to spend more money to get it cleaned up later.
Hmm.
So, as soon as you decide this is a business, get a bookkeeper and you can get a really like a basic subscription for QuickBooks Online. It's like $30 a month. It's
Hmm.
a nominal fee. But you do want a bookkeeper. And one of the biggest mistakes I see business owners make is thinking that they can manage their own bookkeeping. But
Hmm.
bookkeeping is a lot more. And I don't do bookkeeping because I don't like it. But bookkeeping is a lot more than clicking numbers and just recording transactions. There's a whole accounting process to it. And you need someone who does understand accounting. Otherwise, you're going to end up paying more in taxes or getting in trouble with the IRS. Just make sure it's being done right from the very beginning. And you're going to save yourself a lot of money. And you're also going to have good financial records so that you can use that information to make profitable decisions for your business.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is in the startup phase, you don't need to spend money on an office. You don't need to spend it on a website. It may be a good idea to spend it on proper bookkeeping.
Absolutely. Get those unglamorous systems in place, and that's going to be a lot more. That's going to be a lot more impactful in terms of the success of your business. Once you're generating profit, then yeah, get the website, start putting some money into, I don't know, social media marketing or advertising. But right now, you're already doing a good enough job that people are coming back to you or referring friends and family. So ask them to write you reviews on Google, ask them to tag you on your Instagram.
Hmm.
All of those things make a big difference. Ask them to incentivize referrals.
Yeah.
Those things are free or cheap.
Yeah.
So you've already proven your concept. You've already proven that you're successful, that you're doing something really great for someone else, that there's value there. So don't go spend a lot of money trying to bring more people in the door before you actually have the profit to grow and invest in that.
Yeah, I love that. So, speaking of profit, every time I get to talk to you, I come away struck by how much of a priority you put on profit in business. You are kind of a proponent of the profit first approach to business. Explain what that means, and how an entrepreneur, at the startup phase or maybe in the middle phase of growth, can sort of onboard that into the way that they operate.
hmm And I would say even the principles and ideas that we just talked about for a startup, it really doesn't matter what stage of business you're in. If you're thinking, "Ooh, I'm already making $1 million a year in revenue, but I haven't done some of these things," just go do them now. Like,
Mm,
it's not too late.
yeah.
You didn't miss the boat, but take care of them now. Or maybe you go through your business budget and you go, "Ooh, maybe we don't need to spend, maybe we're spending too much on overhead and we could really trim some of that down." Because every dollar that you spend is a dollar that is not profit. You're right. I am a really big fan of Profit First. That's a cash flow management system by Mike Michalowicz, and he wrote a book called Profit First that I love. But the idea of Profit First, I was kind of turned off by it at the beginning because I thought, well, isn't that greedy? Like, why should we be thinking about profit first? Shouldn't we be thinking about serving others first? Because that's a value of mine. But
Yeah.
actually, profit first. The idea of it is that when you're designing your business plan, you have to think about profit as being the goal and not the leftover outcome.
Mm,
So when you think about profit, we're thinking about how much can you actually afford to pay yourself? How much can you save to have an emergency fund for the business? How much can you save to pay your employees a bonus? How much can you set aside to make sure that you have taxes covered so that there's no surprises? How much can you save so that you can grow and try new things and expand without putting your business at unnecessary risk? That's what we say when we mean profit first. All of those, the ability to do all of those things comes from your profit, not from your revenue.
mm. Yeah, key difference there. Now, I can hear a lot of our listeners saying, but Lauren, I have no idea how much money I'm going to make from one tour to another. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. One of them is that, if somebody's chartering a full motor coach and they sell 15 seats on that tour, that's a very different amount of revenue than if they charter that same coach but sell 45 seats on that tour. So, how does somebody in a variable revenue situation like that kind of account for that variability in, planning a profit first cash flow philosophy?
That's a really good question because we can't predict or control everything, right? I always say life doesn't exist on a spreadsheet. You can
Mm,
have an amazing financial model, but it's never going to work out perfectly according to the model. And that's okay. We don't need it to. But
mm,
what we do need is to know what, for let's use the example you just gave of the stagecoach and it could be 5 people, it could be 15 people, it could be 45, we don't know. You need to know your minimums. What is the
mhm,
minimum requirement? So how many people at minimum do we need to sign up for this tour to make X number of dollars in profit?
mm,
Therefore, based on those numbers, how much do we need to charge per person? That way, once you have your minimums, you know that anything on top of that is gravy, right?
yeah,
It's all good from there. You're not worried about losing money, you're not worried about just breaking even. You know that if we do this trip, we have to have this many people charging this much per person or however you price it out, and knowing that that's going to produce a certain amount of profit is going to help us uh, to keep going and to be able to pay ourselves and to keep operations moving.
yeah. If somebody launches a trip and puts it out there and it only is marginally successful, and they look at the numbers before the trip goes and say, oh man, I may only break even on this one. You feel like they should still run it? Or is it time to have a hard conversation with yourself and say, well, maybe we cancel this one uh, because there's no profit?
Yeah, so breaking even means you're doing something for free.
Mm, ouch. That really hurts.
That's not a bad thing. It's just if it's a business, Do you really want to do work for free?
Right.
If it's a hobby, then yeah, go for it. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But if it's a business, then yeah, breaking even means you're working for free.
Hmm.
And in business, there will be times where you lose money. There will be times when you break even. First of all, if you know that you're breaking even, that's the first step because that means you have accurate financial data to even know that you're breaking
Mm.
even.
Yeah.
So I don't consider that as a failure. I consider that as good information because as business owners, we always have to be thinking about business failures as just really the next stepping stone to success. Like, great, I got new information. Now, what do I want to do with that information?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. So just because you launch a tour that doesn't go well doesn't mean you're failing as a tourism business owner. It's
No, you
just,
have to try things. Of course, you have to try things. You want to make sure you have the cash and the saved profit to try new things and to take
mm,
new risks. That's why I love setting goals for profit because if you know that you're going to set aside 30% of your net profit every month in a savings account that allows you to just say, hey, we've never done this tour before. We've never offered this before. We know it's going to take a little money to offer it, to pay our team or, purchase X, Y, or Z. We don't know how it's going to go, but it could be successful. Great.
mhm.
Let's take that money from that saved profit account and we're taking a little business risk here, but we know we can afford it because we've set aside the money for that purpose. So if it doesn't go well, then we haven't lost anything really. We've gained knowledge about what to do next.
Yeah. I love that. So good. Another thing that is tricky for travel businesses is the seasonality of the
Mhm.
business. Most travel operators have a certain season of the year where they do a lot of business. I don't know if it's quite as stark as like an 80-20 rule where you do, 80% of your business and 20% of the year, but group tour operators, for example, very busy in the spring, extremely busy in the fall, summer and winter are pretty dead. That can be really tricky when it comes to cash flow management because it's feast or famine. You've got a lot of cash coming in sometimes and virtually no cash coming in other times. So, how do you manage that cash flow in a way that makes your business work all year, even if you're not literally working all year?
Right. And if this resonates with you, if this situation resonates with you, know that you're not alone. And it is something that can be managed in a way that you don't have to be worried throughout the
Hmm.
summer and winter.
Yeah.
What you've got to do is you've got to know what is our overhead? What are our operating costs that are just exist no matter what?
Hmm.
Second, how much do we need for owner pay? Because you've got to pay yourself. You want to pay yourself consistently. You don't want it to be feast or famine on a personal basis, because, first of all, that's no fun not to pay yourself for 6 months
Right.
out of the year.
Right.
And also, it's harder to make good, grounded decisions about the business or about your personal life if you're worried about how you're going to pay your mortgage,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we want to solve that problem. And the way we do that is, first of all, by knowing how much do you need every single month for overhead, no matter what, how much money do you need? And if you can't do this, if you're saying, well, yeah, I need X amount every month for my personal expenses, just for my own, owner's pay, but I'm not there yet. That's okay. Just write down what those numbers are so that you have a goal to work toward. And
Hmm.
let's just make up a number and say that between operating expenses and owner pay needs, that number is $20,000 a month. Okay, how do we make sure that we have consistently at least, if we're talking about summer and winter, at least $60,000 at the end of the high season to
Yeah.
get us through until the next high season comes in.
Yeah.
So we one of the names we call it is a hill and valley fund.
Mm.
And you just kind of stash that money away instead of looking at the bank account as it grows during that high volume season and go, oh, yay, now we can finally spend money.
I'm rich.
Yeah. Don't feast because you know that there's a famine coming, right?
Right.
Set aside the amount of money you know you're going to need and then and pace it out. That
Yeah.
way you're not making decisions based on the number that's in the bank account today. You're actually planning and budgeting and strategizing, and that's going to create a lot more consistency even when revenue is coming in inconsistently.
Yeah, great advice. You've mentioned owner pay a couple times. How does an owner know how to structure that. Do I take a salary? Do I just take a quarterly draw? Or after a successful tour, do I just kind of guess and say, well, I think I can afford to pull, $1,500 from this one or whatever? Is there a strategy that is, consistent and sustainable for owners to pay themselves?
Yeah, there are some guidelines and it is different for everyone because it really does depend on what your personal goals are. If you are doing this as more of a hobby or you're just starting up and you have another source of income, you don't need the income and your goal is to grow the business as quickly as possible, then you're going to want to take home less
Hmm.
so that you can invest more in the growth of the company. Nothing wrong with that. But I do want you taking home something
Hmm.
because when we feel rewarded, we're inspired to keep going. We're motivated to keep going. So everyone should pay themselves something consistently every single month. I remember when I started my coaching business, I felt like I couldn't afford to pay myself, but it wasn't true.
Hmm.
I felt like I needed to keep putting money back in the business. But actually, what happened is once I started paying myself, I only started paying myself $1,000 a month. Like it was not
Wow.
a lot of money, but it made a really big difference for my family.
Yeah.
Having an extra $1,000 all of a sudden,
Right.
that that feels good, right?
Yeah.
And what that did is it rewarded my effort and it also made me think really carefully about my business expenses
Hmm.
and it also motivated me to make more money. Not because
Yeah.
money is like the end goal or top goal of everything, but it is really motivating and inspiring when you see like, oh, I actually am getting something out of the work that I'm doing. There's a certain point where you don't just want to take owner draws, where you actually do want to file your taxes as an S corporation. And that just simply means you're going to pay yourself a combination of salary and owner distributions. And so you do want to talk to a CPA about this, someone who's licensed to give tax advice. But there's a certain net profit amount. I'm not a CPA, I'm not giving tax advice, but um, a lot of people, a lot of CPAs will say right around the $50,000 a year in net profit mark, you're going to save more money. You're going to spend less in taxes by switching over to an S corporation. And that simply means you pay yourself as an employee of the company. So at that point, you do pay yourself a set salary every month or every 2 weeks, whatever schedule you're using. And then in addition to that, you can take owner distributions, and those distributions are not subject to payroll tax.
Hmm.
So you're saving a percentage on that, which if you're not an S corporation, you're not saving that money. You're paying payroll tax on all of your net profit. So it's really a matter of how big your company is, how much income you want to take home or need to take home. Um, but across the board, I believe every single business owner should pay themselves a consistent amount every single month. And then in addition to that, take quarterly profit distribution. So, based on your net profit and whatever percentage of that net profit you have predetermined is going to be your own owner's bonus, maybe that's 20% of your net profit every quarter. You get to take that home as a bonus and then
Yeah.
spend it however you want. And if that quarter wasn't as good, you don't get as much reward. If it's better, you get more money, right? So that's
Yeah.
another way I like to manage profit and set goals for profit as well.
So if somebody has a fantastic quarter, exceeds all their expectations, you still want them to take the predetermined owner draw as opposed to saying, well, I can afford
Yes.
to dip a little deeper this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And over time, as you see your business grow, if you decide, you know what, my business grew by 50% this year, well, then maybe it's time to increase the salary.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to make decisions arbitrarily from month to month, especially because this is an industry where cash flow is up and down. So if we're trying to create more consistency and predictability, the last thing you want to do is have a fluctuating amount every month for how much you're paying yourself.
Yeah. All right. That's really, really good advice. Now, something that affects people at every point on the spectrum, but especially the bigger companies, is this issue of in tourism, we have people pay in installments, right?
Mhm.
So when they sign up for a tour, they're going to give us a deposit. Might be a few $100s, maybe $1,000 if it's an expensive tour. And then maybe, 2 or 3 months before the tour, there's going to be a secondary payment due. And then 30 days out, you may have a final payment. Uh, we have seen time and time again companies with great reputations, even some big companies, some public companies, get into massive trouble by basically using those deposits to cover operating expenses for trips that they're operating right now. And then when it comes time for the next trip, they've already spent the money that their customers gave them. They don't have the cash to operate. So they get upside down. And it happens to big companies, it happens to small companies. How do you fight that temptation to dip into deposits to pay for your current operating expenses and make sure that your tour company doesn't become one of the many horror stories of this happening?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. So here's what you want to do. Open a separate bank account just for deposits.
Mm,
You don't spend any money out of that deposit account. Now, once that money is earned, so say someone puts down a $5,000 deposit, depending on what your contract is, maybe 50% of that is non-refundable. You can then move $2,500 of that 5,000 into your operating account because that is earned money. You know that you've earned it. It's not going to get refunded to the customer. You're using that for your operations or whatever you need for the trip, right? But that
yeah.
other $2,500, if it's still refundable, you don't get to spend that yet.
Mm,
So it stays there. Once the money is actually earned and it is not refundable anymore, then you can move it into operating and consider that as revenue. But I wouldn't consider it as revenue until it's actually earned, not just because you have it in an account.
yeah. Would you say that in tourism specifically, the money is earned when the trip is operated, or can it be a little before the trip is operated? Does it have to be completely finished before it's earned?
I think it depends on your contract.
Hmm.
So that's another reason why clear contracts are also really, really important. And you do want to have a little bit of money set aside, because there's times where you have a customer that's really, really unhappy, just every now and then, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
happens once in a blue moon where it's like, all right, we fulfilled our contract, you signed it, you paid us, you're not supposed to get your money back. But there may be one or two of the like every now and then where it's like, man, I just want to refund them and
Get them out of my life.
kind of, yeah. If you don't have the cash to do that at your discretion, life is a lot more stressful, right?
Yeah.
So that's another reason why you want to have money set aside and not spend money that you haven't actually earned yet.
Yeah.
But for the most part, as long as you have clear contracts and as long as you're not spending money that you haven't actually earned yet, you're going to be in good shape. So yeah, if that final once that final deposit is due and that money is non-refundable at that point, you don't need to keep it in a deposit account.
Yeah. But you still need to be aware of your expenses so that you're
Mhm.
you're not, overspending out of that revenue to pay operating expenses so that you can't pay next month's operating expenses.
Exactly. And if you're in that spot, then we have to dig deeper and figure out what's causing that to be the problem. Is
Hmm.
it because your prices are too low? Is it because your costs are too high? Is it because you're taking too much in owner pay, which I hate to be the bearer of bad news when that happens, but it's like you can't take 75% of the revenue, to pay yourself. Or
Right.
or did you not plan for taxes last year? Like what's going on that's causing you to be behind with your cash flow so that we can really get to the issue and solve that issue.
Yeah. So let's talk about that coaching process. You work with entrepreneurs across the different kinds of industries here in the U.S. What does it look like when someone has a session with you? When they, open up their books to you? What are you helping them figure out? What are you helping them get on track? Is it just as much like emotional, psychological support as it is nuts and bolts and finances? How does that relationship develop?
Yeah, it's really both because we need good financial knowledge and we need good data to make good decisions, but results don't come from just knowing about something. Results come from action. And so it's all about, well, how do we take this financial information and do something different to get different results, to get better
Mm,
results? So when I start to work with a client, I want to know what their personal goals are. I want to know what is it? And I work from a model of biblical stewardship. So I want to know, what is God really put on your heart? How do you feel he's calling you to steward your business right now? What are the values that you have that you want to make sure you're in alignment with? How much, and then practical things too, just how much money do you need to take home?
Right.
And if you're already there, if you're like, hey, I have what I need, but I would like to make more. Okay, great. Let's talk about your goal number too.
Hmm.
What are your professional goals for the business? Where do you see yourself taking this? So I want to know all of those things. And I also want to know, what are the things that are causing stress right now, so that if there's something where I don't have a magic wand, but if I did and I waved it, what would make your life so much easier?
Mm.
Like, if we could solve one problem in the next 6 months, what would that be? So I want to get a good idea of personal goals, business goals, what's stressing you out, what gets you excited about getting up every morning and going to work. I want to know all of those things, because that gives me a really good idea of what we need to prioritize when it comes to action items, when it comes to making different decisions from an operational standpoint in the business. So finances, the money stuff really is, they're really indicators of operational changes to make.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So if somebody is hearing all this and saying, I need Lauren in my life like yesterday, what are the best ways for them to find you, follow you, connect with you, learn more about working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is savvystewardship.com. And you can just email me, lauren.savvystewardship@gmail.com. And I'll be more than happy to sit down with you for a complimentary consultation. We'll talk about all your goals, what's going on, and then we'll make a plan together.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll link to all of those things in the show notes. Now, I could talk to you about this all day. I know you've got other things to do, so I'm not going to keep you much longer. But before I let you go, we have some questions we ask everybody. These are
Okay.
just for fun. So, no pressure, off the top of your head. When you book travel, do you choose a window seat or an aisle seat?
It depends on how long of a trip it is, but I
Mm,
usually like a window seat.
yeah. Do you like the view or do you want something to like lay your head on?
Both. I like the window open when I travel. I feel claustrophobic when someone in the window seat closes the window.
Yeah, I
So
feel
I
that.
like control over the window. That's what it
Yeah,
is. It's a control
I heard
issue.
somebody pointed out to me the other day that's like every time you get on a plane now, everybody closes the window shades, and it didn't used to be that way. I think it's because they're all looking at their phones and don't want the glare, but we miss a little bit of that sunlight and the view and all that stuff. It's kind of a bummer.
I love the view. That's my favorite part of flying, is the view. So,
Yeah, for sure. So, what's one thing in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
ooh, I'm taking way too long to think about this one.
You're good. You're good.
Probably my um just my water bottle. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
I need to stay hydrated. I don't like just the little cups of water that they give you. I need my water bottle.
yeah. Plus, it like a good water bottle keeps it
Mhm.
cold, and cold water
Mm,
is so much better to drink,
mhm.
easier
Oh,
to
and
drink.
and you know what I also bring? I
Mm,
always bring a paperback book. That's like
mm.
my thing when I travel. I like to read an actual book.
Yeah,
So, I always have
I'm
that too.
I'm with you for sure. If you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
Oh my goodness. I'd probably go to Paris right now,
Mm,
because I studied abroad there. It's been almost 20 years, and I've been wanting to go back, but I just
yeah,
haven't had a chance to. So if I had to decide today where I would go, I'd just go to Paris for a week.
yeah. Well, that may tie into our last question as well. What's one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Oh, that's such a good question. When you say on the road, do you mean like
Just away
just
from home.
wherever?
Yeah,
Huh?
wherever. Away from home.
Yeah, away from home. I really want to take my kids. I have 3 daughters, and I really want to take them to some different museums in Paris, because they've
Mm,
been studying all the art stuff in school. And so I feel like they're at an age where they would actually have an appreciation for it. And so I would love to take them back to the places that I went to in college, because I know that they would love it.
Yeah. Well, hey, put that on the list of goals. Start setting the
Yep.
money aside one day. That's a dream you and the girls definitely need to make happen. We'll be rooting for you to see that through.
Thanks.
Lauren, thanks so much for joining us. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. This was fun.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this interview. I want to let you know that conversations like this are just part of what you will hear if you tune into a full episode of the Gather and Go podcast. When you listen, you'll get travel news you may not hear anywhere else, along with some really helpful road tips, some smart analysis, and maybe even a hot take from me about issues that are impacting travel right now. Now, you can hear this full episode along with many others by searching for Gather and Go in your favorite podcast player. Or you can click on the link right below this video or one of the videos right here to my side. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.